All right, guys. So welcome to another episode with Mornings with Movers. Unfortunately, we did change the social channel today just because Facebook and their fun algorithm and updates. So we are now live on YouTube, and maybe we'll be back in the group next week. Um, wait, echoing. But let's see.
That drives me crazy when that happens.
Let's see. Um, all right. So yeah. So again. My name is Dwyght with Max Movement Training. We have Charlie Morris in the building he's the president of the Pennsylvania Moving and Storage Association. So welcome, Charlie.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and then we have Clifford Starks, the inner warrior coach in the
Oh, crap. He
building.
got it.
So yeah, how's everybody been doing?
I'm enjoying the journey. I can't wait to hear Charlie speak. Know more about him. I'm excited.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Charlie, tell us about how's it been going with the movers industry in Pennsylvania.
It's been slow, as it has been, I think, a lot for a lot of people throughout the country. But certainly the first quarter of this year has been very slow for the movers, primarily due to higher prices of housing and higher interest rates. People just haven't quite adjusted to that yet. I think they will. Give them a little bit more time and people will adjust and make their moves accordingly. I do see a pickup on the housing market. It definitely looks like there's more properties going up for sale, and they're still not staying on the market all that long for the most part. So, I think we will
Gotcha.
see some things change, and I'm looking forward to a busy summer season. I'm not sure it's going to be similar to some of the busiest seasons we've had in the past, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because I can remember, summers being horrible to the point
Hmm.
that you felt like you were overworked in the summer with all the things you were doing.
Got it.
As a sales rep, which is what I primarily did in the industry for many years before I became executive director of PMSA and executive secretary for Tri-State Household Goods Tariff Conference. Um, yeah, during the summer months, so much of the time I was blocked out and couldn't even book anything because we were at capacity. And where now, I think it's something where salespeople can still sell something throughout the summer months. Um, so I think, perhaps that's not a bad thing. Uh, and at the same time, obviously as a salesperson, you want to make sure you're getting, the best price you can for the service you're providing. And
Hmm.
I think perhaps if the volume's not quite as great, you might be able to do that
Yeah.
because you'll have the flexibility of having, space available at what is considered the busiest time, the end of June, the end of July, and such.
Yeah, I like to believe that you have the 120-day sprint starting in May. So you got to get it before, the end of August before it starts to slow down a
It
bit.
used to be basically May 15th through probably actually the end of September. You stayed very, very busy. And now I think it's died off to where you actually start to dwindle down by mid-August.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see the same, volume still there in September. Now, in my particular market that I worked here in, I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the south central part of the state. And a lot of people here are snowbirds and, head off to Florida and point south in the fall. So actually, one of my busiest months of the entire year was usually October.
Okay.
I
Oh
probably
yeah.
booked more business in October than I did most other months. And I think, hopefully we'll still see that happen again.
Are you talking about now doing long distance moving or?
It was primarily long distance. Yeah. I mean, I sold everything. I sold local moves. I sold what we refer to as intrastate moves. here in Pennsylvania, if it's 40 miles or under between origin and destination, it's a local move and based on hourly rates. And then once you go 41 miles and over within the state, it becomes an intrastate move, which is on a weight and mileage basis for the pricing. And then, of course, we had our long distance move going to other states. So I sold all that along with quite a bit of O&I work as well, because I not far from the state capitol in Harrisburg. And as a result of it being the state capitol, there was a lot of work for state agencies as well as other groups that were associated with those state agencies or with the state government.
Gotcha. Yeah, 41 miles don't sound very far at all. Like, especially
It's
thinking
not.
about, so I'm
It's
like,
not. It may be a little bit outdated, but
mhm.
it's still the way the rules are written. So you
Oh
abide by the
yeah.
rules.
Yeah, and I've been seeing that as well, is that like as the market changes, like some states, like North Carolina and some states like Atlanta still haven't updated their tariff in like years. Like it's been the same tariff for several years, and you're just like, well, minimum wage is like almost like in New York it's $15, but soon to be $18. And you're talking about having a max rate tariff where you can't charge more than 149, for 2 men in the truck. And you're just like, insurance is out
Well,
of
I
this
think I
world.
think in North Carolina, the state actually regulates the rates. They regulate the tariff. They issue the tariff. Here in Pennsylvania, they do not. The individual mover can submit their own tariff, or we have a group tariff under Tri-State Household Goods Tariff Conference, which I run as well. And we have a tariff there along with it has rates in it. And then we have three different tariffs. One is for local, one is for moves 41 miles and over, and the third is an exceptions tariff where movers can file their individual exceptions that they want to do a little different than what's in the other tariffs. And that's my biggest tariff. It actually is almost 500 pages
Hmm.
in that particular one, with about 230 movers being part of that group.
Gotcha, gotcha. So what is the biggest hurdle for a new mover wanting to become a regulated mover in your state?
In Pennsylvania, you're required to have 2 years of experience working for a licensed mover or the equivalent. Um, the equivalent's a little bit of a gray area sometimes as to what
Mhm.
that actually is. The easiest thing is if you have that 2 years of experience, having worked with a licensed mover, it's pretty much a piece of cake as long as you have the financial ability to go into business.
Gotcha. Uh,
But getting the equivalent is a little tougher for some. And as I said, that can be a little bit of a gray area sometimes. But if you have a background in other transportation services, or you have a strong background in running some type of a business, um, many times that can qualify.
all right.
So
Let me count you on that one thing though. I guess 'cause we're on this show. So with that, I had the same issue that I ran into at New York State when I first started my company over 10 years ago. And I guess they said you should work for another moving company, I guess a licensed moving company within the state that you're applying for, like yourself in New York. Um, but if you're a mover who was a mover for 2 years, how does that play a role in knowing the regulations?
it doesn't. It doesn't really. It gives you some background in what the business is about. And I guess the idea is you can learn the rest. Um, and perhaps, as a quote unquote mover during that time, you've been exposed to some of the pricing, you've been exposed to how the business was run. Particularly if you're thinking about going out on your own, you're probably talking to your current owner sometimes, picking their brain, getting some ideas of what being an owner is all about.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my thought, is that, someone who has that entrepreneurial spirit is probably going to talk to people about it, either the owner of the current company where they're working or someone with another company,
Gotcha, gotcha.
possibly elsewhere within the state, so that they're not, you know, talking to somebody who's going to be a competitor kind of thing. But I'm sure that I think they do that, or they. A lot of people call me, talk to me too, to see, what things I might be able to offer. There are a couple of transportation attorneys or attorneys that specialize in that part of it that can oftentimes help them too with a lot of information that they might need about going in. Of course, the biggest obstacle you were saying, obstacles, I think is, having enough money to get into the business. Um, if you've got $1,000 in the bank, it's not going to work.
See, I think,
You got to have a little bit of a, you need some money in there. I mean, my personal opinion is you probably really need, 50 or $100,000 backing you up, because when you start paying for, your cargo insurance, your liability insurance, your workman's comp, all those kind of things, uh, it eats up a lot of money real quick. And then, of course, buying equipment, yeah, especially if you want to go out and buy something new, I mean, it's expensive.
yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't hear it from me, but I think like some people started their company with little to nothing, and it just depends on which avenue you're going. Like if you're going into immediately into full service moving, of course you need a truck, you need insurance, you need all that other stuff. But I think a lot of people start labor only to test the
Yes.
waters to see if it's going to be something they want to do. So they go on moving help, which we always frown upon. When we talk to customers, oh, don't choose those for moving helper. They ain't licensed. They don't know what they're doing. But at the same token, a lot of people get their start that way, where they build up a fan base and then they kind of merge over to the full
They
service
do,
side.
and as long as they do it legally and they don't, start supplying a truck and a driver, it's
Mm-hmm.
not an issue. Yeah, because within Pennsylvania, the only part of the moving process that's actually regulated is supplying a truck and a driver to transport the shipment from point A to point B. If all you're doing is loading a customer's rental truck and the customer's going to drive, you don't have to have authority.
Yeah, I think that's where people get that gray area, like, oh, you know what, we're only driving 5 minutes.
Well, yeah.
We'll do
I mean,
it.
that's the problem. Yeah, it's so easy, and so the temptation's great, and the
Hmm.
customers there like, well, can't you just drive my rental truck for me? I don't really feel comfortable doing it, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and they can't cross that line. And if they do, then they expose themselves to issues and problems, and oftentimes they get reported not generally by the customer, but if another mover obviously finds out that they're doing that, they will report them, and our Pennsylvania PUC Enforcement Division will pay them a visit and let them know they can't do that.
Yeah. So what do you think about the new changes that they're making in Florida with I think they're trying to figure out how to really regulate it, and I think they're trying to put something in place regulating
I'm
growing.
not all that familiar with what's going on there, and so I plead some ignorance on my part there. But I know Florida in the past has been basically unregulated, and so they're trying to, I guess, put some regulation in place, which I think has merit. I think it does protect the consumer better when there are regulations, particularly as long as the state requires that the mover have liability and cargo insurance, and perhaps requires that um, they have workman's comp coverage on their manpower. Because I mean, if you hire somebody that's operating under the table, under the radar, chances are they don't carry an insurance. And my concern's always been if one of the crew members gets hurt on the job, it can come back on the homeowner.
Yep.
So making sure that companies have those things obviously does protect the consumer. And I think you still find that movers are very competitive in their pricing. So I don't think having regulation um, in any way takes advantage of the customer from a pricing standpoint. I believe the customer is still getting a great deal on that particular move.
Yeah, I would say um So no, I would say I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. No, I would say that I think if they go in the direction of getting a tariff set up in Florida, that might be the first step. But also because how big the state is, I think that their main headquarters is in the Tallahassee area of Florida. And I don't know if they have any subdivision across Florida, but anytime you ever got any notifications or any inquiries, they all always sent it from that Tallahassee office. So that makes it very,
That's
very
a state capital, so I
yeah.
assume that's why it's there.
Yeah, so I think that's been the biggest issue where it's like, well, Florida has so many mini cities and so huge of a state that, in order to regulate it, you really gotta have places people can get to quicker to enforce, hey, I'm going to give you this ticket because we know that you're illegally operating. But if you're coming from one place, a part of Florida, and you got to drive 4 or 5 hours to get to a movie company, oh yeah, this.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, obviously Harrisburg's the state capital. It's somewhat central in its location, and Pennsylvania is a fairly large state as well. Um, it's probably what 300 miles across PA and let's say 150 to 200 miles top to bottom. So it's a fairly good sized state. But with the PUC, they actually have things divided up into four different regions within the state. There's a western region, there's a somewhat central region, a north east region, and a southeast region. The Obviously the western region, the biggest area there is Pittsburgh, and the southeast, the biggest area is Philadelphia. And then on the northeast side, it's Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and in the central area, it's Lancaster, York, Harrisburg, Lebanon area are the primary areas. And then there's plenty of other little smaller municipalities and things around.
Okay, okay.
But they're for purposes of enforcement, they have that divided up into four different sectors. And that helps a lot to do it. And they're actually based or stationed in those particular locations. So they're close by.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But
Okay,
the PUC headquarters itself and the compliance office and that regulates the pricing part of things or approves the pricing part of things, that's all located in Harrisburg. But I'm
okay.
fortunately only about an hour. I'm an hour away from Harrisburg myself. So if I need to go there for something that's a fairly short trip.
Makes sense. Okay. Cliff, what's been going on with you in the journey?
The juggle is real. um, Learning to stretch myself less and less so that I don't snap, and putting my schedule in place, which I'm really excited about, and being the best husband and the best father that I can be as I go through this journey, and supporting. One, I do want to thank Charlie for you have amazing insights and information. So I get to hang out in rooms like this with smart people and learn a lot as I go through the process. And Charlie, I can tell that you're a very good salesperson too, because you really selling selling is about seeing all the sides and seeing where value lies. And you're a very valuable dude. But yeah, I'm just having fun going through the ride, expressing myself in the best way that I can, and learning so much on the journey, learning so much on the ride. Hopefully that answered your question. I got a
No,
lot going on in my head right now.
no, that's good. I was just thinking about the time management thing, and I'm a big advocate for it when it comes down to that, where, even though I now get up at 6 a.m., go through my process, try to meditate a little bit before I start my day. And I think that's very, very helpful, because it really like quiets the noise. It, allows you to
Hmm.
hone in on where you are currently and where do you expect to be. And then
Yeah.
you start the day because you kind of mapped out that vision in your head while it was quiet. and then
Mhm.
basically just sticking to it, having your calendar so that one, you have your time management blocks. Okay, from 8 to 8:30, I'm doing this. From 9 to 9:30, I'm doing this. And just mapping out the whole day, I think is kind of crucial because one, it keeps you from scrambling. Like, what could I be doing right now? Oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. Oh, I got distracted. I need to be doing this. And some people can't be that organized, but I feel like if I'm not organized, I go crazy. So,
Oh yeah, I got to stay organized, or in the best form of what organization means to me, because if I'm not, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and that's not a good thing for me or anybody else.
like typically like my Saturdays right now, after this call, I'm usually creating content for the week so that, I can always be producing value to my audience who's following me on social media. But because, I've been able to delegate that and work with and have and hire an internal marketing team, now
Mhm.
it frees up my Saturday where I'm just like, dang, what do you do? Should you go and
Mhm.
enjoy life now because you don't have stuff to do? Yeah. So yeah, but I'm gonna mess around, probably find something to fill that block with because I'm just me and I'm just feeling like I always got to be productive, which obviously we shouldn't always feel like we need to be productive because sometimes we're doing too much of the wrong thing to try to get that needle moving forward.
Yep. Yep. No, agree.
So what's the future looks like for the PMSA, Charlie?
I think it's good. We keep trying to grow our membership. Um, as I said, I run two organizations. The one organization is about 230 movers, and with PMSA, we aren't quite to that level. So I keep trying to get those movers to join as well. The Tri-State Household Goods Tariff Conference strictly is filing rates and tariffs for movers with the Public Utility Commission, which regulates the movers here in PA. And then with PMSA, it's more of a educational and social group uh, where we get together once a year for our yearly conference, which will be coming up on October 22nd and 23rd in Gettysburg, PA. Have some great speakers lined up for it. Um, and then we hold various webinars and things throughout the year of things that are coming up that are important. Have one coming up here on May 14th, which is going to deal with the new Corporate Transparency Act, where LLCs and corporations have to file certain paperwork with the federal government because they're trying to make sure that nobody's out there operating illegally or laundering money and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So that's
So
something new. We're going to have a discussion of that because all my movers, for the most part, are either LLCs or corporations.
yeah.
I actually run my own individual LLC. So
Do you think having, I'm not gonna say, let me just say, I guess reword it. Do you think having like a fresh spin to the organizations could potentially liven it up where like I've been to, let's say, the Tighten Up retreat,
mhm.
Louis Mazzaro's big that he's had in Arizona, and like the music, the live events, the kind of like party atmosphere, but then the knowledge dropping gems. Like, do you feel like that's something that could probably like bring more energy, more people to these conferences, increase the membership versus, like I've shown up to these conferences at times and it's just like, like watching that old school video in class where, it's black
Right.
and white and you're just like, oh man, we gotta sit through this again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've tried to incorporate a little bit more fun into what we're doing and make it a little bit more social, make sure we have, sufficient breaks in there where people can mingle and talk. Because I think that's the real benefit of a group is being able to get to know other people that are doing what you're doing and learn from them.
Mhm.
I mean, that's goes back a long way. I mean, I've been in the industry since 1977, which is probably before either of you were born. Um, but I've been doing it since then, and I've always been interested in being involved in groups that have things going on.
Hmm.
I previously served when it was a individual group by itself with the Certified Moving Consultant Program. I served on the National Board of Directors there, and met certain people that have been long-term friendships in the industry, and who I can have learned to who I got information from and have learned from, and attended a number of different association meetings through that. Met some of the owners of some of the larger companies throughout the United States, um, and got to know them. And I can pick up the phone and call them with questions or concerns, which is a pretty neat thing. I also, in my career, I spent 1 year working with a company that was then called relocation.com, which sold moving leads to moving companies. That was a
Okay.
great experience. I learned a lot. Um, it didn't work out, but in that 1 year period, I learned an awful lot regarding that particular area of leads and buying leads, and how to do that, how to work those leads, and things of that nature. Relocation.com was actually absorbed probably a year or so after I left there by moving.com. It's now part of that group, but
Okay.
um, I'm a real believer in that. I mean, I also work for an Allied van line for a couple different Allied van line agents, and worked through their lead generation program, which was set up extremely well. I also spent a short time with a United Van Lines agent, and also worked their system too, which was pretty good
Yeah.
as well.
I was thinking, I was
But the
thinking,
important part of that is you have to work them. They
yeah,
just getting the lead and picking up the phone and calling somebody doesn't do it. You have to reach out to that customer. You have to sometimes reach out a couple times to get the appointment, and then of course once you get the appointment, then you can go from there with the regular sales process.
gotcha. No, I was just thinking, when I was down in Florida, I went to the Chambers of Commerce down there, and it was a really this branch of Chambers of Commerce was a really, really great branch. Where every week I think we had a meeting on like a Wednesday or something like that, had breakfast, and it was just like we networked with people, and then they told us about things going on and what events they had lined up in the next for like this month, next month, etc. And it was like a really active chambers. And I think they even had a gala coming up where people needed to get suits and all this other stuff because it was just going to be like a business, kind of networking, dancing type of event that seems so amazing. And I'm just like, if you were like, not even you, but if like the associations was able to apply something like that, where just moving owners can come together, vendors come together, maybe once a week or every other week, and they could just network. Of course, you pay a membership fee similar to the chambers. Cliff, you want to say your piece before you take off?
Yeah, I appreciate you all having me on today, Charlie. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I really do like the orange background. I think that's amazing, and it woke me up. So yeah, you guys have an amazing day. Dwyght, keep holding it down. Take
Definitely,
care. I'll
definitely.
talk
All
with you
right,
guys soon.
y'all.
Take care.
Thanks,
So
Cliff.
yeah, so I was thinking like if we were able to incorporate, like if the association was able to incorporate something like that, and I'm just spitballing for ideas, that might not be bad. Where it's just like all the moving owners come together, they pay a membership fee for the month, and then basically you bring together outside community businesses that could probably network with them or whatever the case is,
Mhm.
and just grow it as a community for movers. Like, the association meetings that you have twice a year or once a year is great, but then having that extra oomph on top of it.
And this would be done a little bit more on a regional basis, I assume. would be the way you'd want to make that work.
Yeah, probably because people probably definitely wouldn't want to travel that
Right.
far.
Well, plus, if you want to pull people in from the outside, community, local community and things like that, and get some whatever happens to be realtors and
Hmm.
assist,
And you
um,
could probably hold it at
retirement
the
living,
chambers.
different, and the Chamber of Commerce, etc. Now, many of the
Yeah,
chambers, of course, hold those kind of things themselves, but be great to have sort of like
yeah.
a mini group that would be specific to that particular.
And I think a perfect stop would probably be the chambers for each region.
Right.
So essential to every moving company in a sense, kind of come together and work in that area and just have like an advocate, a member that's the association that could just run it. Might not be bad.
Right. I agree. I was giving some thought because we were going to get together today as to what I could actually offer or my thoughts and ideas that might help. As I said, my background is that I spent from 1977 to about 2012. For the most part, I was a salesperson on the street, working uh, estimates for customers and selling moving services. And then I became a regional sales manager for one of the largest movers in the country, and initially was in charge of their offices in Texas and Louisiana, and then I moved back east and was in charge of offices in Baltimore or in Maryland and Virginia. The one office being close to Baltimore, and I'm not too far away from there. So, uh, a lot of good experience doing that, and what I found, it took me many years to learn, but the number one thing I would probably offer to someone who's in sales is to learn how to be a good listener
Mm.
versus a talker. Now, my own background is, I don't think I've ever shared this with you. I started out, my first career was that of being a radio disc jockey for a number of years in small market. But I did that for about 7 years full time, and then actually was able to do it for roughly about another 30 years on a part-time basis after I got into the moving industry. So as a result, I love to talk. But I found that in working with customers, doing a lot of the talking wasn't necessarily the best thing. And as I said, it took me quite a while to learn that and learn how to get the customer talking versus doing the talking myself. But once I did, my my closing percentage on sales and things went up significantly, and I did a much better job. The other part that I found was so important was follow up, and particularly being a sales manager, this was one of the things I worked with my salespeople because they were always very hesitant about contacting the customer after they've been out to see them. And they're always concerned, I'm going to be a pest. I'm going to bother them. They don't want to hear from me. Uh, well, they do. And by hearing from you, it convinces them that you have an interest in them. Where if all you do is go out, give the estimate, wait for them to call you back to say, I want to use your services, or you never hear from them again, or they call you and say, we've decided to go with somebody else, which doesn't happen all that often. Um, you're not gonna close that many moves, that many jobs. But if you stay on top of it, and of course today versus when I first started out, you have new ways to do it. You can text them, you can email them, in addition to a phone call. So not everybody likes a phone call. And I used to actually would talk to customers and say, after I realized, we would talk, and I certainly would try to get them to make a decision that day while I was there if I could, but making the assumption that a lot of them weren't ready to make that decision yet because they were still going to talk to somebody else, or they just wanted to think about it, whatever. And I understood that fully. But I would tell them I would like to follow up with you, to later to find out, just what we can do to secure your business, and ask them what their preferred method of contact was. Would you like a phone call? Would you prefer I send you a text? Would you rather I send you an email? What's going to be most convenient for you? And
So,
different people wanted different things.
so what do you think about this fun technology? I know we did a webinar probably like I think it was like last year. Time is flying. We did a webinar with Live Switch. The AI is
I was
just
on there, yes,
yeah, the AI is just growing
with
phenomenally
AI
now.
and what's the other one?
Between ChatGPT, Meta AI
Yes,
now, it's getting crazy. What do you think about
I,
this?
I just sort of sat there in awe as I was watching that, because that's way beyond my comprehension in some cases, just because I'm not there doing it. If I was doing it, I'd probably understand it fairly well. But since I'm not, in that part of it anymore, um, it was a little foreign to me, and I was trying to, comprehend. But yeah, it's amazing what else you can do. I mean, they were talking about things where, basically a tickler file that AI allows you to keep, and you know, a year later, 2 years later, whatever, it's sending something out to that customer that you worked with, a year or 2 years ago. It's staying in touch with everybody. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I didn't incorporate. I don't know about that one yet, but I do know that when we worked with Moversville, and I would recommend that to a lot of people who's trying to increase their marketing because they focus on email nurturing. And working with them, they would build a drip campaign that would reach out to the customers over the course of a year, and then reach out to them on a day 365 of the anniversary of their move date, a year ago, and they would say, "Hey, wow, the years just came up. If you're thinking about moving again, definitely don't hesitate to give us a call, and etc." And the words obviously be changed up to make it sound nice, but I thought that was like genius to have like that drip campaign of
Right.
email nurturing.
But I'm not sure. I'm not privy to the exact numbers, but people live in a house for X number of years before they decide to move again. But there's an average out there of how often, people do relocate. So
Hmm.
it's got to be more than a year that you're, keeping that kind of a file. Now, in the past, I could have done it with a, index card file or something like that, but that was probably a bit too cumbersome
Hmm.
of us.
Yeah, before I knew about CRMs, we were using a note like a binder where we would have like the first all the way to the 30th, and we would basically put all of our work orders on whatever date that job was, and we would try to keep those jobs organized that way. But
Right.
when I found the CRM finally, and I was like, oh wow, we don't have to do that anymore.
Now it's amazing what technology has done and how it's changed things. I mean, again, going back to when I first got into the business, um, some of the larger companies out there had some telemarketers and things of that nature that they use to go after people using the real estate multi list and that kind of thing. I didn't have that opportunity because of the market I was in. I could do telemarketing, but it was me doing the telemarketing. I didn't have somebody else to do it for me. But I did have some contacts where I had access to information of people that were putting their homes up for sale and that type of thing, and would send out postcards. Or when computerization came around, I was able to set up something and could start sending out a letter, which I felt actually got a little more attention sometimes than the postcard would have, because I think it showed to the customer I was putting in a little more effort into
Mm.
contacting them. And so we did that. I would go to the neighborhoods that I knew were somewhat transient in nature, and at that time you could hang doorknob hangers and things like that, which uh, you probably can't really do that much today either,
People
depending on
still
the
do.
yeah, depending on the neighborhood you're in, or there's a lot of non-solicitation rules out there for certain boroughs and municipalities and townships that you just
Hmm.
aren't allowed to do it. And of course, you with no call list and things of that nature, you can't really be picking up the phone and calling people. Uh,
Yeah, things are getting more stricter, but they want
if
you to still make
if you
money.
haven't already made contact with them. Now, if you've already been out to see them, you can follow up with a phone call, that kind of thing. But to cold call, by phone to an individual residential customer, which is primarily what I dealt with the private transferee or COD market, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
And but the so when lead generation came around, um, that opened up some doors for a way to reach out because the customer was reaching out asking for someone to contact them, and then you could do that. But of course, one of the issues there is that oftentimes those leads that you're buying from a lead generator, they're also going to some of the move brokers and people of that nature, which is another interesting area that you deal with. And as the local mover, I think you still have the advantage because you are brick and mortar and located where the customer is, and there's something to be said for that. But um, brokers have a good spiel that
gotcha.
they
So,
use in contacting customers as well.
yeah, so let me ask, I guess. So obviously we all know from an industry standpoint that finding drivers isn't an easy task.
No,
Um, so, but obviously with these insurances, they want you to screen the drive a limited pool of drivers to make sure that they're the right drivers for your company. So that ultimately one, they get paid because their insurance. And then two, obviously, the company could get paid in a sense. So it's kind of like a gray area in a sense where it's just like you need to make money, so you need to hire whatever drivers you need to make. But then the insurance company is even though they want to get paid, they don't want to take on the risk. So they're like, well, you can't have that driver, but you can have that driver. And it's just like, what do you feel ultimately is the fix to trying to, I guess for these moving companies to be profitable some way, somehow, because obviously we know the driver pool is just so limited.
right, and you have to compensate your drivers well to get them,
Mm-hmm.
and or they will go to another company that is willing to compensate them better, or just to attract people into the industry itself to do it. The household goods moving industry is totally different when it comes to drivers. It's not just driving from point A to point B,
Mm-hmm.
dock to dock, which a freight driver will do, and that's great, and they certainly serve a fantastic purpose in our total economy because they bring the food to your grocery store, they bring you know all the things that you need um, to survive. But in the household goods side of things, that driver, in addition to being a driver going from point A to point B, they have to be a bit of a PR person for the customer. They're also a crew chief out there. They're the leader. They've got to make sure that the people they have working with them, helping them to load, um, enjoy working with them, want to work with them. I think that's, it's very important that it be a team effort and that everybody gets along well, because that'll reflect, back to the customer, as far as, if there are problems. If the driver and the helpers aren't really getting along well, the customer will sense that, and it will affect the overall move experience for them, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
affect it negatively. So it's very important that, both your drivers and helpers, they need to have really good personalities in addition to being hard workers and uh, being concerned about not doing anything that's going to cause damage all those kind of things. And so it's a tough job.
Yeah. I
It's a
think they
lot
should
tougher,
have,
I think, than being a freight driver.
yeah, I think they should have, like, in my opinion, like a forgiveness type of program where obviously, when you get a new driver in your company, they're gonna run their MVRs and they're gonna see, what their past is looking like if they had tickets in their personal life,
Right.
etc. And that affects you on a commercial side, which kind of sucks because it's like, well, hey, this employee is going through this check for a job, a truck driving job. So one, I don't feel like that should affect the company as like on a big scale, but it should, I guess kind of like they should take that into consideration that, okay, well, this is for like employment and kind of like, lessen the impact in a sense and say, well, hey, you know what? This driver has so much on the MVR. Maybe we do a forgiveness program. We'll put them through a driving simulator or whatever the case is. Make sure that they pass with flying colors within the first 3 to 6 months. And and then we'll monitor their record from there. If they have anything that happens, then automatically it's a red flag. They need to be terminated or we're going to penalize the company or something. But I think having something like that in place will then entice people to just be able to bring people in, train them regularly, and not have to be fearful that, oh, my insurance is going to shoot way up because I got this risk on my policy that they don't really know
Yeah,
about.
you have to be concerned about those kind of things, obviously, as a business owner. But it's not easy, again, it's not easy finding someone to be a household goods driver
Hmm.
because of all the responsibility that goes with it, of not
Yeah,
just being
so
a driver, you're a supervisor, as I said, you're a public relations person for the company out there. You've got to make, you're there to make the customer happy
yeah,
and make them feel comfortable that they got reasonable or quality service for the price they're paying. And all those things are all factors.
yeah, and it's crazy. Like I said, the driver pool is very slim picking. So it's just like think about, hey, you got an Indeed ad out for drivers, drivers, drivers. Oh, I only need 3 drivers. You got to go through a pool of like 20 drivers to hopefully hire the right ones. And then you hire the right ones, and then snap, they got something on their MVR that you don't really know because you got to pay money to to get it printed out. And now it's just like, well, I can't even have this guy. So like, who can I have? And
Right.
it's crazy because at the end of the day, the trucking industry is $1 billion industry or more, and you're slim pickings because there's people that want to drive, but they messed up in the past, and there's no programs to help them lower the insurance for commercial people.
Now, on the other hand, I think the advantage to attracting drivers to the household goods industry versus freight is the fact that they aren't going to do the same thing tomorrow that they did today or the day after that. Where, oftentimes with freight, you have a regular route that you run, etc. But with household goods, you're going to be in a different customer's house today than you might be tomorrow, or maybe you'll be with the customer for 3 or 4 days in a row, whatever it might be. But then you'll go on to, another customer. You're going to deal with different personalities. So if, one of the things when I was a sales rep, I mean, there were some customers I went to see that weren't exactly my favorite people all the time. Um, you went in there and you said, well, I don't really know if I want to do business with this individual. I don't know, there was something about it, the attitude, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
Uh, but at the same time, I also knew that, I was going to be there for an hour to an hour and a half, and then I was going to go somewhere else. And so, I did my best while I was there, and then I didn't also, many times if someone that, quite frankly, I wasn't sure I
Think you froze on me. Yeah, sorry. Weird. It
okay.
kicked me off. But
We lost you there for a moment.
yeah, sorry about that. But I was hearing you about that about seeing the customers and everything. Um, so have you ever had to pull your guys off a job because of a customer? Tell us about that one story.
Um, I don't think we ever did.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, I don't think we ever had to. My guys stuck it out and got the job done. The philosophy, I guess, of the companies I worked with was, once we're there, we've got a responsibility to complete it and get it done, and then you know that kind of thing. But I don't recall ever having to pull somebody off.
Gotcha. So what is your take on, I know we're almost at the top of the hour, but what is your take on these companies that's put they're like, let's say 4 to 9 truck operations and they're pushing about 150 to 200 jobs a month. Like, I guess what is your take on that type of volume?
Well, I mean that's the kind of companies I worked for. In the past, myself, we were that size, sort of a medium sized, what I consider a medium sized company. Um, and it just takes, I mean, going back to what you were talking about in the very beginning, it takes a lot of organization to do it and keep it on track. Again, with technology, it's a lot easier to do today than it was before. I mean, the first company I worked for, we had a big chalkboard on the wall, and all the jobs were listed up there, and that's how we kept track. But with technology being what it is now, you can do it on the computer screen, and it's actually much easier to do. But it's it can be tough, controlling that kind of volume, uh,
Yeah, and definitely staying in
particularly because you're
compliance.
dealing with individuals. I mean, as far as your drivers and your helpers. I mean, what do you do if the driver calls off sick? What do you do if a couple of the helpers call off sick?
Hmm.
Uh, because most of your jobs require X amount of men to be on that job to do it properly. And
Yep.
so you either hopefully have enough backup that you can pull somebody else in or do something else, or in a rare case you contact the customer and hopefully you can push off the job by a day or so
Yeah, if you're not
to
too
make it work.
busy. I know that I used to work, we used to work 7 days a week, and it got to that point where we just said, you know what, we're going to be closed on that seventh day just so you guys can have a mandatory day of rest. And, on the off chance that we had to move a job from a Tuesday and because maybe the customer had a closing issue or the weather was not permitted, then we would probably see if we could do that Sunday. But I would make that
Right.
optional for the guys. I would say, hey guys, can 3 of you work on Sunday so we can get this customer service, or we're gonna have to push that customer to next week? Because we knew that that was a mandatory day that was off.
Right. Most of the, again, with the companies I work with, most of us were on a 5 day schedule, Monday through Friday.
Oh, nice.
And Saturday work was not something we did on a regular basis, but we always had that to fall back on if we needed it. And obviously, falling back on a Saturday wasn't all that bad. Customers were usually pretty receptive to being able to do it. That was actually very convenient for them. Um,
But no
and
jobs on a Saturday. That's when a lot of people like to move on Saturday.
I know but we didn't do it. We, you know, and the employees enjoyed it because they liked having that 2 day weekend
I
for
bet
the
they
most
worse
part.
for you.
Uh, we did we did some Saturdays were more reserved for doing commercial type moves many times too. That's
Okay,
we do those on a Friday night and Saturday, um, to do it, and we put our crews out there for it. And the way we're structured, they were usually getting, by that time they were many times they were getting overtime to work on the Saturday. So
gotcha.
they would usually readily agree to come in and work for time and a half.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, all right, so we are at the top of the hour. So, what do you want to say to the movers out there?
Uh, my main thing, and I mentioned this to you before we got online here, uh, my one of my biggest concerns today are the movers out there that in a regulated environment are working, under the radar, aren't regulated. So if you run into that, make sure that that's being reported to the people that do the regulations, because those companies that aren't licensed, if you're in a licensed state like we are here in Pennsylvania, are taking money out of your pocket. So you're the one that's losing. So make sure that you are, reporting those kinds of things. Also, you know, treat your people extremely well. You need those drivers, you need those helpers, and despite some people that I've worked for in the past, you need salespeople too. And so you need to, along with your office staff, inside the office staff that's doing all the paperwork, everything else, everyone in the company serves a valuable purpose. And also, I think it's very important that everyone remember that no matter what your position, you are a salesperson for that company. And so if you're a driver, you're selling the next job for the company, because the person you're moving has friends. They have people they'll talk to. They'll do referrals. If you're a helper, it's important because that's your livelihood. So again, you want to, be a good representative of the company, be a good salesperson for the company. The internal staff, when the customer calls into the office, treat them with respect, take your time with them, those kind of things. I think that's so important. And from a sales standpoint, as I said, be a good listener and follow up. Make sure you're letting that customer know you want their business, and stay in touch with them, and talk with them and make sure what their needs are. And when you're going through the home or you're doing it virtually, as a lot of people do now, you're finding out what their important things are, and listen carefully. And then as you're talking to that customer, reiterate some of that information that they've already told you. They'll sit there and go like, well, this person knows exactly what I want. Well, yeah, because you told me. But it's important that you do that, and you address their needs. You make good notes, make sure that you pass along the proper information to operations, so they perform the job the way it's supposed to be done, the way the customer's expecting it to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my most important things, I guess, in the industry.
Okay.
And
So I was going to just say, so everybody, it's all it comes down to is processes, 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 and building your company culture, because, you can
yes,
put, I've spoken to a bunch of clients who, really got a pretty decent operation going on, but their company culture lacks a lot. And, they don't care because they're making a dollar at the end of the day. I think I posted a post in my Facebook community, and it was talking about um, tips that people can be using to incentivize their crews to not get damage on the jobs. Like, we all know damage is going to happen, no matter how safe a crew works. Maybe that wheel off that island just came off because, they just handle it some kind of way wrong, and it just, by accident fell off. Okay, well, that's a claim. And it's going to happen on a job because they're touching 100 different types of pieces at times. One job we had, it was a two-truck job. I think we had 6 guys going out there, and it was a big day. I think they was out there for like 10 hours or something like that. And one item got damaged out of the whole entire 200 and something pieces on that inventory. And the customer was like, yeah, they did a good job, but just this one item got damaged or whatever the case is. And I kind of was like at a sigh of relief in a sense, because I'm like, it was only one piece, you know? And it was
right.
like, well, what do you mean by that? No, nothing, 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 nothing. Because, because it was one piece out of 200 pieces that like so much could have went wrong and just one piece got damaged. So
Percentage wise, it's pretty low.
yeah, so it's just like incentivizing your guys to just say, well, hey guys, for however safe you guys can be, it may take a little more extra awareness, but however safe you guys can be, at the end of this period, whether it's 3 months or however long, we're going to give you a safety bonus. And, the guy kind of frowned on it where he was like, I shouldn't have to incentivize my guys for work to doing their job. But we know that they're going to go out there and do the job. We know that. That's why we hired them. But just to have that extra measure, just like you have spiffs for your salespeople if they hit a certain target. Yeah, hey, if you could, instead of booking 4 jobs today as your normal goal, if you could hit that fifth job or that sixth booking, we'll give you free lunch tomorrow, or whatever the case is on the company. Then they're
Right.
more enticed because they're seeing the 4 every day, but they're like, I don't need to push it more than 4.
Okay. Plus, if you have that company culture and it's well established, your people are going to stay with you. They're not going to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've read a number of things where, somebody asks for a raise and they go like, "Oh, we can't give you that," but it's going to cost the company probably 10% more to replace them than to give
Yep.
them that increase. So, those kind of things are, important. And but I think more than money, that the big thing that, works within a company is that people are happy. They like doing what they're doing. They like the people they work with. They like the way they're treated by the owners of the company,
Mm-hmm.
that
It
type of
trickles
thing.
down from the top to the bottom, yeah. But all right, we are at the top of the hour, so I hope
Very
y'all did
good.
get a lot of gems. But y'all take care. We'll see y'all next Saturday. Thank you so much, Charlie, for joining us today. Yeah, if you have
Most
any,
welcome. Thank you for the invite.
definitely. All right, y'all take care.
Have a great day.